Jack, do you have your scripts?
Yes. Yep.
Whenever the chair is ready to begin. Chair, do you want to read the scripts, or would you like HLO to read the scripts and begin the meeting?
Sorry. So am I waiting or am I going ahead and starting the meeting?
He's going ahead. Let's go ahead, starting the meeting.
Interpreter, are you ready? Give him a thumbs up. The Board of Sign Language Interpreters meeting is convening at 9:37 on August 7th, 2024. This meeting is being held in person and virtual by video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. The Health Licensing Office asks that individuals attending through Zoom keep your phone muted and cameras off during the entire meeting or until you are given the opportunity to comment during the public and interested parties feedback period indicated on the agenda. I will now call roll. Me, Jack Ludwig, here. Audrey, here. Al, here. Mish, here. Tammy is absent. Oh, sorry. Colleen is absent. Tammy is going to be here later. And Eric is here. Yes, I am. Good morning. Yes, good morning, everybody. So members, if you want to comment, please say your name for the record. And if any interested parties, public comment, please sign the roster sheet available in the room. For public members on Zoom, please, Teams, please email Carrie Edwards at carrie.edwards@oha.oregon.gov and provide your first and last name. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, protocols when conducting board business. This meeting is now called to order.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Bob Bothwell, Director of the Health Licensing Office. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We need a member to
So anybody want to approve the agenda?
make a motion to approve the agenda.
Or do we need to amend? Should we, sorry. We need
To approve the agenda.
And Audrey says, yep, I approve the agenda. Do we have a second for approval of the agenda? Eric seconds, Mish seconds. Let's call for a vote. Eric? Aye. Audrey? Yep. Mish? Yep. Al? Yep. All right. So Jack as well.
Excellent. Thank
Okay,
you.
so the agenda is approved. I think we can go ahead and start with the question and answers from the Healthcare Interpreter Program and Medicaid.
Yes.
Are they available on Zoom?
Yes,
Or
Edna and Robert are both, Nathan are both there. I can say that. This is Sammy, and this stemmed from some questions about what types of providers are required to get interpreters from the registry. And so to help kind of clarify some of those questions or any questions that you might have, I asked them to come and be able to provide those answers for you. So, if questions, they're here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I can do a quick introduction. Can you hear me clearly? Thank you.
Yes.
So my name is Edna Nyamu. My pronouns she and her, and I'm the healthcare interpreter program for Equity and Inclusion Division at OHA. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have for me.
At OHA.
And I am Nathan Roberts, also with the Oregon Health Authority. I am with the Medicaid division, and I'm here to also support and answer questions that might be Medicaid related.
So the question that had come up was from several meetings ago about who, this is Sammy, who,
Jack, yeah, who do we start with?
what type of, this stemmed actually from the email from Jack about providers who are required to use an interpreter from the registry. And there are some that don't, if they don't take any public funds, and then there's some that obviously do, if they do take public funds, and that's kind of where the question stemmed from.
So let me answer that. Thank you actually for the opportunity first for having us here and with Nathan. So there is a list, long list of who are the healthcare providers. And that is in the rules. We'll be happy to share the list if Sam has not shared, which I think she did before, who is defined as a healthcare provider. And those who do not, as you already know about it, those who do not receive public or federal funds are not required to provide healthcare interpreters from the OHA Central Registry. But anyone who is receiving public funds, the new law from House Bill 2359 is required to work with healthcare interpreters from the OHA Central Registry. So that's where it stands for, at least what we have right now.
Thank you, Edna.
This is Bob. Can I please ask, Eric, Al, and Audrey to, take yourself off camera for a minute, so we have the interpreters and Edna and Nathan. And if you have a question, then come up on screen, please. Mish also, please.
And you want me to take mine off as well? This is Jack.
Yeah, unless somebody has a question. And then who has the meeting guest with the stadium book? You can turn that off, please.
I'll just remove them again.
Okay.
I have a question.
Thank you, Mish.
I don't know if it's easier if I speak or sign.
It's up to you, Mish.
My question is, when you say public funds, do you mean state or federal?
That is correct. Yes.
So either state or federal, because anyone accepting public funds is still under the federal law of section 1552, I believe it is, of the ADA, that qualified medical interpreters must still be provided. But you're saying so if they don't accept any state or federal, they do not have to follow HCI registry or the mandate to have a qualified medical interpreter.
Yes, whoever is not receiving public funds, yes, federal funds.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
turning it on.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then
But somebody keeps turning on together mode and I keep removing it.
does any other board members have any questions? Sammy? Okay. Guess you guys are done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Edna. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Edna. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Interpreters, this is Bob. Can we ask whoever has the stadium mode or the together mode on to shut it off? And they did. Thank you.
No, they keep turning it back on. I removed them.
Okay.
So don't turn it back on.
Good morning, Chair.
Hi, should we proceed to, this is Jack speaking, proceed to number 3? Or we're done with number 3?
That was number 3.
Okay, so now we'll get back on the agenda to number 4, correct?
Yes.
We're gonna open with the report. So the director, Cindy, would you mind?
Hi, good morning. This is Bob Bothwell for the record. The first item in the director's report is the sign language interpreters board member recruitment. This is a document that will be with each meeting moving forward. And it has explanations of the board membership, recruitment process, term limits and reappointment process, and board member training. And I would like to call to the board's attention at the bottom of the page. There's 3 hot links there with regards to their training that must either be done once per term, annually, or annually. They're required trainings that they have to take. Any questions on that? Okay, and then the second page of that is,
Andrea,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Audrey. Morning.
Yes, hi, good morning. I want to clarify for the list, the agenda for the board members, the roles, where it lists everybody's names and it has the role that they fulfill. And Eric represents interpreters, educational interpreters,
Talking
for
about,
programs in rural areas, and that is an error. Wait, let me back up. If you look at Eric's name on that list,
It's just putting it on the spot.
okay,
they're individual representatives for programs, for the programs.
okay. I'm being told that
Here,
they
I'm
are,
gonna switch to spoken English.
Thank you. So my question is with our listed roles on page, I don't know, their pages aren't numbers, but it says current board members at the top of the page and then all our roles underneath that. And it lists Eric as an individual who represents sign language education program at a post-secondary Oregon Institute. So to me, that's a college setting teaching an interpreter training program. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that is actually what you do. I do teach at Western Oregon University. I know Mish teaches at Portland Community College in the interpreter education programs there. So I think there's some clarity we need about our individual roles and make sure we're on the same page with that.
okay. We'll have Derek take a look at it and reach out to the board members individually.
Governor's office, we'll have to put them.
Eric is giving a thumbs up.
Okay. In the governor's office.
And you saying thank you?
oh, I wasn't sure. Tammy just joined.
It is 9:52 and Chair Tammy has joined for the record. Okay,
Saying yes.
okay.
Okay.
So moving on with my report, if the chair is ready.
Yes, I've noticed that Tammy did just arrive at 9:52. Yes, so we are ready to proceed.
Okay. So currently Jack Ludwig is the chair. Everybody is in their first term.
Licensing and fiscal statistics.
Okay. I can finish up this part of the report or we can move on.
Oh, sure. I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that you hadn't finished.
Not a problem.
My apologies.
No problem. So Jack, as the chair, is in his first term and the current term expires 12/31 of 26, and Jack can reappoint. Pauline Thayer is the vice chair, also in a first term. The current term expires 12/31 of 25, and Colleen can reappoint. Al Mascarenas is in a first term, which expires 12/31 of 2024 and can reappoint. Audrey Ramirez Laudenbach is in a first term and can reappoint, and that term expires 12/31 of 26. Eric Cook is in a first term that expires 12/31 of 24 and can reappoint. Mish Kachek is in a first term that expires 12/31 of 26 and can reappoint. And Tammy Adams is in a first term that expires 12/31 of 25 and can reappoint. If there's no further questions with regards to that, I'll move on to the board report.
Miss has her hand.
Good morning.
This is Mish. Will you quickly walk us through the reappointment process and what that looks like?
I certainly will have Derek do that. He's going to step up to the table.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Jared Foltz. So anyone that's close to the reappointment date, I usually reach out to them about 30 days prior to that. We'll give them instructions on how to reapply. So it's going to be very similar to the initial appointment process. You have to do all those little steps. I think there's a few that you won't be required to do that you had to do in the initial one. But I will send an email with detailed instructions when it's time for that person to reappoint.
Any more questions for Derek? Okay,
Jack says I don't have any. Anyone else?
looking for hands to pop up. No, I think we're good.
Okay.
All right,
For you, Bob. Do you
thank you.
have other?
The next page is the issue for the sign language interpreter's temporary license. So as of June 7th, 2024 at 11:59 PM, all HLO issued temporary licenses became null and void. HLO has extended the limited waiver on enforcement through December 31 of 2024 through the end of this year. This means that HLO is exercising its discretion to not take any disciplinary action against individuals who are required to be licensed and choose to work under the limited waiver on enforcement. In short, not obtain a permanent license. Excuse me, not obtain a permanent board license. The limited waiver of enforcement is narrow. The waiver only applies to singular issues of providing sign language interpretation services in Oregon without a license. The HLO may impose discipline for any other violation of HLO or board rules or statutes. The limited waiver of enforcement ends again on December 31, 2024, and on January 1, 2025. Any individual not covered by exception and providing sign language interpreting services will need to have a permanent license to avoid enforcement action by the HLO. Board members are required to be licensed to serve on the board. So, there's a little graph at the bottom of that statement, which shows how many licenses in each category were issued from January 1 of 2024 through June 7th of 2024. Reading on, education, a temporary license, there were 94 issued. General, there were 347 issued. Legal, there was 38 issued. Medical, 344. Provisional, there were 58. And supervisory, there was 204 for a grand total of 1,085 temporary licenses that were issued and are now void. Any questions? I'll give it a second, Chair, if you don't mind, to let folks find their button to raise their hand if they need. Okay, moving on. The next slide is the supervisory licenses issued. There were 19 in Q4 of 2024, and now in Q1 of 2025, there are 24. General licenses, there were 8. Excuse me, there were 5, and currently there are 8 in Q1 issued. So
Total of 13.
for a total of 13. I apologize. Let me go back one slide. So supervisory, there's a total of 43. And general, there's a total of 13. Education licenses issued, there are a total of 3. Legal, in Q4, there were 2, and in Q1 of 2025, there are still 2, or actually 2 more for a total of 4. Medical, in Q4 of 24, there was 10, and currently in Q1 of 2025, there's 16 for a total of 26.
0 provisional.
And 0 provisional. Audrey has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm confused about the quarters. So it looks like there are some permanent licenses that were issued before. Oh, sorry.
A page there, sorry. I don't think, yeah, oh, Audrey, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Sorry. So it looks like, according to this, so I'm looking at medical. This says page 26 at the top. So 10 were issued in quarter, I can't remember what number you said from, but it says Q4. Thank you, Q4. So that would be, it says July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. So does that mean 10 people got their permanent medical license in that time frame?
Yes.
So not the temporary,
No.
but the application for licenses wasn't even available, right? Until I applied, I think it was pretty close to the first. Was it, maybe I'm misunderstanding, maybe I'm wrong. I thought the application wasn't even up, but for the permanent license until July 1st.
Timeline versus.
Possibly the interpreters can do a quick switch.
So done with the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
They're trading.
no,
Just give us a
sorry. So this is Bob. I guess I should have led off with, the state runs on different years than a calendar, right? So we run from July 1 of one year to June 30th of the following. So is your question, Audrey, as I understand it, we have what? There was only one.
This would be, and when you started taking notes.
Right, at the end of the fiscal year. is when we started taking apps.
Right, so how did somebody get the permanent license before? When was the
So,
application?
it's a group, it's a,
6, 7, and 6:30. Yeah.
yes, so between
Oh, it was June
7
7th.
and June 30, yes.
Okay, I think
So
I
the
had
board-
my dates mixed up then, I apologize. I thought the application wasn't even available until July, so that's where I'm missing it. Okay, I'm so sorry.
All good. And then the quarters are a block of 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions on that? Guys, was any confusion?
It's very confusing.
Okay, and the next slide,
Jack has his hand raised.
go ahead, Jack.
I have a question. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding everything clearly. So the statutes for everything, those are to get the permanent license. Is that accurate? The statistics for that is for the permanent license.
Correct.
Okay. So as of right now, only 16 interpreters can serve in the medical environment. So that number of 16. Okay, so right, all together. So is that the same? So is that the same amount of interpreters that are on the HLO or the HCI registry? Can anybody answer that? Is that, do they jive?
We don't know that. And they can work on the waiver.
HCI's rules don't require them to hold an HLO, SLI license.
Oh, no, sorry, that was my question. So my point was, are they the same numbers? I'm just curious if HCI has more ASL interpreters on their list. So I'm wondering if this is showing proof as resistance toward the license. Because if the numbers match, I feel like interpreters are showing, that there's no resistance there. So that's just my perception of it. So that was my question. Just to see if the number of medical interpreters that can interpret in the medical arena, if they're the same, because really that's life or death, so I was just curious about those numbers.
Sammy has her hand up.
This is Sammy. So the number would be skewed because I'm under, my assumption is the original temporary license holders are, most of them who held the medical license are working under the waiver. So it would be, we wouldn't know until the requirement is that you have the license. We're not gonna know. Because it was 344 had the temporary medical license and now only 426. So I'm assuming all of those are working under the waiver.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I just was curious about the numbers. I just didn't know if there was like ongoing resistance for interpreters in the medical setting to see if they were demonstrating a resistance. Did someone have a hand up?
Looks like a
Wendell, did you?
public member does, but we're not in public.
That's Laura Wendell
Oh, Laura.
from HCI. It's something better for.
Sorry, am I allowed to answer Jack's question? This is Laura Wendell from the Healthcare Interpreter Program of OHA. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to interrupt. Jack had posed a question about Jack had posed a question about the numbers of sign language interpreters on the registry. We have about, it's around 355. I'm approximating, but it's well over 300. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay. ASL interpreters, like 355 or all spoken language? Was that 355 specific ASL interpreters, Laura?
ASL or other tactile languages. Yes, we have almost or over 2,000 overall spoken and sign language.
That makes sense.
So
So yeah, so I see the temporary license, there was 344 temporary medical license issued. So that, I feel like that is pretty close. So thank you so much for answering my question.
Okay, moving on. So the next slide was run just yesterday, so these numbers are not exact again. So from Oregon, we have 3 folks that have an education license, 6 with a generalist from Oregon, and we have another from Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, New York, Texas, Utah, and Washington that are licensed in Oregon to provide services. The legal, we have 2 from Oregon and 2 from Washington. Medical, we have 1 from Georgia, 1 from Idaho, 1 from New York, 19 in Oregon, 1 from Texas, 4 from Washington, for a total of 27. Supervisory, we have 1 from Arkansas, 3 from Arizona, 1 from California, 2 from Florida, 1 from Indiana, 3 from Kentucky, 1 from Missouri and North Carolina, 2 from North Dakota, 1 from Ohio, 1 from Oklahoma, 17 in Oregon, 1 in Pennsylvania, 2 South Dakota, 1 in Texas, 1 in Washington, or excuse me, 3 in Washington and 1 in Wisconsin.
Basically, this is Sammy showing you that half of the licensed people are not in Oregon. It's just interesting. It's my interest.
Eric?
Hello, good morning. This is Eric. I'm gonna just use English. For all those out-of-state folks, is the idea that those are people providing virtual services? And I guess my kind of underlying question with that is that also a license that people providing video remote interpreting are required to have? Because I don't see any in education, and knowing how few interpreters we have in the state for educational interpreters, I would expect there to be more out-of-state folks with educational licenses. So I guess my question is, do people working out of state providing educational interpreting need to have licenses? And if that's not, this is just the report part, we can talk about that later. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sammy.
So this is Sammy.
Jack, sorry, I'm not sure, sorry to interrupt. The interpreters are in VRI. I mean, the interpreter is really choppy. So I'm missing a lot of frames. So I'm catching most of what's going on. But just letting you guys know that I'm having a hard time accessing the interpreter. Because the board camera is very smooth, but it's just the camera on the interpreter itself is causing problems.
I don't know if there's anything to do with that bandwidth wise.
No.
We'll go mention to say something to our.
No, I'm just letting you know if I miss something, it's just to clarify and be transparent with the communication process.
Excellent. Thank you very much for paying attention to that.
No problem.
Okay. I'm moving on. The next slide is licensed by age and gender. I assume everybody has the slides in front of them because it's pretty hard to verbalize what how old some people are and so on and so forth. So if anybody has any questions, just pop on.
Sorry, Tammy? Sorry to interrupt. Tammy, you had a question?
Hi, I'm going to go ahead and also use English. I think the reason that many people in Oregon have not applied for their permanent license, especially educational interpreters, comes down to cost. and having the money to actually pay for the license. So I think there's some delay in people getting their licenses. I've heard of many people say that cost is a factor and that they're literally not able to get their license at this point. So they're kind of using that waiver to save up money to be able to pay for their license.
Makes sense. Okay. Moving on.
Tammy, did you have your hand up again, or did you forget to put it down? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, thank you. So these numbers that are on the license by age and gender, those include the temporary licensees. And Heather has her hand up.
Yeah, Heather?
Thank you, Jack. I just want to provide some information after Tammy's comment. So individuals who are interpreting should remember that there are the Oregon Department of Education rules, and that to interpret under their rules, they will need to comply with those rules. And those are separate from the SLI board rules, in which HLO has provided a waiver. That waiver does not apply to the requirements under the Oregon Department of Education rule. So individuals who are interpreting under the ODE rules should verify what those requirements are and make sure that they're in compliance with those rules if they want to interpret for ODE purposes.
Okay, thank you. Tammy, did you have another comment?
And people that are hiring interpreters need to make sure that they're hiring people that are following those same rules. But those have been in place since 2013, so people are used to doing those. Does that
They're
make
not
sense?
holding a license with HLO.
No.
And that's in their rule.
They should check, this is Heather, they should check to see if there are any updates to the ODE rules.
I put it in your packet I sent this morning. The new rules.
I was working this morning, so I have not looked at the new packet. Thank you.
Could read the minimum qualifications. Yeah. Basically, the minimum standard is the public school may employ or contract for the services of a sign language interpreter for a student only if the sign language interpreter is licensed through the health licensing office and meets the following minimum standards. The sign language interpreter must achieve a passing score of 3.5 or above on the EIPA performance test or hold an RID, NIC, CI, or CT certification and hold a bachelor's or associate's degree from an interpreter education program or a related educational field, or achieve a passing score on the EIPA written test. Those are all the qualifications that must be followed in.
This is Heather. Are there any questions about what the waiver covers or does not cover?
And if we could pause, please, for the interpreters to switch.
Interpreter switching, okay.
Jack, this is one of the interpreters speaking. Is the frame okay on the interpreter? Is it close enough for you? Okay, Eric, I call on Eric.
Right. Good morning. This is Eric again. And similarly, forgive me, I didn't catch this piece in here in our handout. And so I'm trying to skim it quickly and process my thoughts at the same time. Were you just saying, Heather, or maybe implying that the ODE rules say, or I guess Sammy was just reading that you have to have the license? And so I guess my question is if the waiver is in place until the end of the year, I feel like what I'm hearing you say is that regardless of the waiver, they have to have their license still to be in compliance with the ODE rule. Is that correct? Am I understanding you correctly? So like they would have to have a license when school starts, you know, in a couple weeks, rather than waiting till the end of the period of non-enforcement or the waiver period.
So this is Heather. Thank you, Eric. This is complicated. There's a lot of different pieces going on with interpreters, the HCI registry, what ODE requires, and the sign language interpreter statutes in your board. Under ODE rules, which are on page 46 and 47 of your packet, the page numbers are at the top of the pages. Let me clarify, 47 and 48. That's ODE's new rule, which was just amended, I believe in June of this year. And Georgianne can, my understanding is Georgianne from ODE is on the line too, so she can answer some questions. Hi, Georgianne. So if you look at page 47 at the bottom, ODE has amended its rule, and it states that person needs to be licensed. Okay, and the waiver that HLO in its discretion has provided through the end of this year would not apply to ODE enforcing its rules. It only applies to this board and HLO enforcing the SLI rules, not ODE rules. Two different things. So under ODE rules, there is a requirement to have a license. And that's a new change. And again, you know, trying to marry up what ODE and the board and HLO are all doing, we're all trying to work together to get rules in place along with the statute and what the statute requires. But people should be aware of these different changes and how the waiver works.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any other questions? Tammy has a question.
So this is obviously very new, and most educational interpreters are off during the summer and have not looked at any of their emails or anything like that. So I imagine that as soon as we return to work here very soon, there will be a flood of applications that will come in. I didn't know, but I've been traveling and working all summer. So yeah, all right. I will let people know.
Again, also.
Hi, this is Georgianne. Did you say my name?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, this is Georgianne, and I am wondering, the intent was not to require people to get a license prior to HLO's ability to stand up a license. So I'm wondering, in your waiver, is there language in the waiver stating, you know, this will serve until, like, not needing a license serves as a license until you need a license? Something much clearer than what I just said.
No, I don't think so. This is Sammy. Yeah, no, it only applies to what HLO has the authority to do. So it wouldn't be waiving the requirements of what's in the ODE rules. Sammy? That ability, but I think maybe we could do like an FAQ to the education people in the next couple weeks, to letting them kind of know, clarify, because honestly, I didn't even think of this, so. You and I could do something together to send it out. So not an FAQ making no sense.
Yes, and I'm just concerned about what Tammy is speaking to about a flood of people coming back and not having a license because HLO gave a waiver. So somehow can we label that waiver as in place of a license, and that solves the problem. They're waived until you get a license up and running.
I think that have to be in ODE's rules.
Well, that'll take months. We won't be able to change our rule. Yeah, it takes forever to change an ODE rule. I know Sammy and I have talked about this, the way that everybody, all the state departments do it differently. So ours has a stand-up board and a stand-up rack for everything ODE, and you have to get on those schedules, and they actually aren't participating in the summer. So cute dog, Eric.
This is Sammy. To be continued. I
Okay.
don't have an answer.
We'll
But
figure it out somehow.
we are intending for the board to look at a temporary rule specifically for education, so maybe we can talk through some of those details there. And then we can walk away and see what we can craft, and might mean the board has to meet a short meeting again to adopt a temporary rule, but we can kind of work through that when we get to that part of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Sammy.
Thanks, Georgianne, for being available.
Yeah, I'm here the whole time.
Okay, any more questions? I have one slide left. It's the one I've been dreading to present. But here it is. So the Sign Language Interpreters Board, I have provided it's very thin, very light, there's a lot to it. But what it does show is that the board has brought in $4,250 in revenue and has an expenditure of $77,338, leaving the board in the negative balance of $73,088. As we move through and folks get their license, this number will change. That will be head in the positive direction. But until that time, this is where we stand when this report was run. And that was just a couple of days ago. And this, and again, this report will change. If I printed it for you and gave it to you every day, which I'm not offering that, but it just changes as folks get licensed and as HLO or the board spends money for the board. Okay. That is the end of my report, unless anybody has a question.
That's great. Any questions out there? So now let's go ahead with the licensing.
Policy, I believe.
Yeah, policy.
Okay, we're at policy.
Yeah, so
We're
this is
at policy,
Sammy.
yes.
The HCI, the Oregon Council on Healthcare Interpreters, is recruiting for a member of the deaf community. So I added the flyer in there. So we have a QR code. So you can hand this out. I can send you the individual email from Laura that has all the information, but I just wanted to kind of get it out there for everybody so that you had it. And so, yeah. And the last person that served was Chad Ludwig, so he's not on there anymore, so they're looking for somebody. And then, any questions about that? The next.
Okay. I'm sorry, this is Mish. Could you actually repeat that? My audio cut out briefly.
Yes, so the healthcare interpreter program is seeking council members, a deaf community member to serve on the council. It is vacant. So they need people to apply, and this flyer has a QR code that you can scan and then apply. Jack, if I send this to you, could you get it out to your constituents?
Oh, sure, I definitely can do that. And I also have a question. I'm assuming that the board is not permitted to be part of this council, correct?
There's nothing precluding it, that I know.
Oh, okay, I was just curious.
Not in our rules.
I mean, it doesn't say that I'm going to apply. I mean, I have a lot on my plate already, but I just wanted to check.
If you have questions, Edna can answer them.
This is Mish.
Edna, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I don't see the problem with that. I think you should be able to apply.
Thanks for clarifying that.
This is Mish. Will you also send that information to me? I might know a deaf person who's interested.
Sure.
Yes, and it does not have to be a deaf person and even ASL. We just need a subject matter expert.
Thanks, Edna.
Thank you. And moving on, are we done with all the HCI related topics and move on to the rules update?
Yes, so this is, we've had 4 meetings, the Rules Advisory Committee. The first meeting was really spent kind of trying to figure out how we were gonna do things, how to communicate with each other and all of that. And then what order we were gonna go in as far as licenses go. And then, on the March 22nd, April 10th, and July 18th, we focused on a provisional license. Which we'll also focus on tomorrow, because at the 18th meeting, there were several members not available, so we're gonna want to have them look over that again. And then they'll probably look over the education license that you guys are gonna discuss today. And then I think they're gonna go to the generalist next, but it's kind of up in the air, so. But the provisional they've gotten it pretty tied down where there's requirements, you have to be proficient in sign language, proficient in English. And there's like three different pathways that you can get licensed in, that they'll be recommending to the board when their job. Any questions about that?
Any questions? Yes, Eric.
Are we gonna get, it sounds like they've kind of put in the work and they're gonna have a proposal for us to review or discuss. I just have questions about the provisional stuff that they've talked about. So if we're gonna get into it later, awesome. And if not, can I pick at it right now?
So the process for rulemaking is different. So how we're doing it with this board is the RAC is meeting and we're stacking up all of these rules, and then I'll bring the recommendations to the board, and then the board will go, no, we don't like this, or we're missing that. And then we'll propose them and then go on from there. That's how I foresee it right now. That doesn't necessarily mean that it can't change, like we're proposing to do a temporary rule for education. So since the school year is starting to get more people in, so there's room for flexibility.
Okay.
This is time for an interpreter switch.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just gonna keep going if that's okay, Jack.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Yes, please.
So at the July 18th meeting, the RAC went through what was currently in the education license and basically looked at all of the certifications that RID has under their kind of umbrella that they approved that recognize, that's the word. So we've added all of the things that they recognize, so nothing's being left out. Because there were a few that were taken out, that there was like one person who needed to come in with that certification. So you'll see a large list of all the different recognized certifications through RID. We added it here so that there's, if they have one of these, they can come in under the education. And then they have to work a bachelor's degree, same as the Department of Education, and if the applicants, and then we have the rule for the EIPA, if they haven't gotten their scores yet, then they would attest to having taken it, and then they would show us upon their renewal that they passed the exam. So it's trying to open up the door to get as many people licensed as possible for the 2024-25 school year.
Sammy, what page are you on?
I'm on page 43. Forty-one to 43. Any questions about that?
Tammy, do you have another comment?
Yes, sorry, I was getting back to, I only have one screen because I'm not at home, so. So they have to attest that they have taken the EIPA, correct? And then they can get their license. And then on renewal, they have to prove that they've passed the EIPA with 3.5,
Correct.
correct? Okay, just making sure that that is clear. So there's no, you get another chance, or you can go for so many times before, there's none of that. So you show I've taken the test, I'm just waiting. And then when they apply for their official license, then they have to show that they passed. Correct?
When they renew.
When they renew. And we're talking a 1-year license? Are they all still 1 year? All of our licenses?
Correct.
Okay. It does get more people in. It also potentially lowers the quality of the interpreters that are working in education with our youngest, most vulnerable population.
Mitch.
Glitched. Am I back?
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Yep, you're back.
So you can have someone who's taken the test who eventually might get their score back and only get a 2.5 or a 3 or something. Now that person has interpreted for students for a year, where you have potentially a language deprived student that's now even further behind because this person has interpreted for them for a year, just because we're trying to get more people in the door. So it's lowered the standards and lowered the quality of the interpreters, potentially.
Yeah, this is Sandy. So
I agree.
in May, when you guys adopted permanent rules, you actually adopted that rule, saying that they could attest because of the 6-month waiting period for school. So this is just being picked up from that language that was adopted by the board in May.
I believe I disagreed with that back then as well, and I think I abstained.
We'll go on to Mish when.
Yep.
So I have, sorry, this. Sorry for, I'm having some technical issues. My second monitor keeps cutting out. I actually don't remember adopting that in May. I actually thought that the board was against that. And I just want to echo Tammy's concerns that the 3.5 is already lower than standard and has been a law for multiple years. We're not raising the bar on any standards. This is something they should already have per Oregon law. And my third comment is a question for HLO. How are they going to track the fact that someone has applied, tried to renew, not met the criteria, and is not qualified for that license until they're able to get that 3.5? What's preventing someone from just issuing a new application saying, I tried it again? Well, not disclosing that they've tried it before, but how is HLO going to catch that when someone applies, they are a brand new applicant versus someone who's already applied and was denied renewal?
I mean, unless they change their identity, they're gonna come up as already will be a license. But this is this is Sammy, this isn't a rule right now. You can take it all out. And it would be removed from what's in the rule now.
Okay. I did not take notes during the May meeting, but I didn't remember passing that. So maybe I see Audrey has their hand up.
Audrey, go ahead.
Thanks. This is Audrey. Yeah, I had a question. I forget your name, I apologize, but the person from ODE that was joining us, are they still here? Yes. Hi. So I was wondering if would this be below ODE's standard? Does ODE allow some flexibility for people who have taken the test and are waiting for results? Is there any kind of workaround within the ODE requirements?
This is Georgianne. Do you want me to answer that?
Please.
Okay. So ODE actually does not keep track of anything sign language interpreter, except that we have the requirements and the school districts are required to follow those rules. If we were to get a complaint from a family that they felt that their interpreter wasn't qualified, that's how we would get involved. At this point, I don't know of any complaints we've received. Well, I've a year and a half. I've only been with ODE a year and a half and haven't received any. However, I believe that was part of the legislation's intent about having this licensure, because we as ODE don't do license, TSPC does, or in this case, HLO. Does that clarify it, Audrey? Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I see Tammy's hand up, and this is Audrey. I was going to ask Tammy as someone who's connected to the district.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Audrey. Tammy, go ahead.
Audrey, what was your question?
This is Audrey. I was just going to ask, as someone who works for Educational Service District, and maybe Eric can address this as well. is there flexibility within districts as far as if a sign language interpreter or working sign language interpreter has taken the test, is waiting for results, but still like, so I'm trying to determine if these standards are below or equal to what is in practice now.
So we need to follow what the ODE rules are, which is to have your proof that you've passed at 3.5. So my question for Sammy, and so we don't hire, for at least for Columbia Regional, we don't hire until people have their documentation that shows that they scored at least a 3.5. My question for Sammy is if we have to follow what's in the ODE as far as having the license, is there anything in the ODE that says they can work without the 3.5?
No.
Then they can't work without the 3.5. So they have to have their results. So this rule doesn't work. Is that correct?
Not disagreeing with you. It says the sign language interpreter must achieve a passing score of 3.5 or above on the EIPA performance test or hold an RID, NIC, CI, or CT certification.
So they have to have it. So that rule doesn't work.
Since over, right?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna scream to the top of the mountaintops for the children.
They can or have an RID.
Correct. RID would be higher than 3.5.
Mish, I see your hand is up.
I just want to speak in support that I don't think this board should go under current laws. And again, I'll reiterate, I don't remember ever agreeing to do that. And that's not something I'd be on board to lower the standards or to ignore what the Board of Education has already set as a law.
This is Tammy. I agree with you, Mish.
This is Sammy, just so we understand that everyone understands, if someone takes the test today, they are not going to receive a score probably until January, which is why you put this rule in place. So I don't know how many of the applicants come in through the EIPA versus the RID. I don't know what that number is. I'm assuming it's a lot. So you might be whittling your number of sign language interpreters. Yeah.
Eric, go ahead.
Thank you. And that's, I believe, going all the way back to the start was why we were trying to come up with some sort of learner's permit or alternative. So that way we weren't contradicting what ODE's standard is and what the OAR is, but we were trying to make either an exemption or an avenue or some other way, at least in our rural areas, to bring in people that are in more of a grow your own kind of status who are not yet certified. And that's why we were talking about the learner's permit forever ago. And then that's why I've been curious, what they say in the provisional license, and if they were gonna try and figure out a way to fit in up and coming educational interpreters in that scope. But yeah, this
Do
is.
you mind saying your last two sentences again, please? Yeah. Eric, sorry,
We're having a hard time hearing.
you kind of sound like you're underwater a little bit.
Sorry. With what I was saying is that we had explored the avenue for either an exemption or an alternative license or something for people in a non-certified status to be able to still get skill development and work in the field as an interpreter in training. But then we were told that that learner's permit was not in compliance with what the law or the rules were. And so, so yes, this is the way it's written is in compliance with the ODE, except for this piece about people who are in waiting for a test score. And so I still feel like we need to make some sort of exception or exemption for people awaiting a score because we know how long it takes to get the results. So I guess that's my 2 cents about that. Because it's going to directly impact our services that start in 3 weeks on my end. If we're going to require that people have an educational license and we are not taking into account people who are awaiting scores. Because I've got 3 people on my books right now awaiting scores. And if it says they're safe, I guess, cool. But in support of everything Tammy and Mish are saying, I too, I'm not in any way is it easier for me to sign?
Whatever you choose, Eric, but just give us a second to pull you up if that's what's going to happen.
Okay, I'll just sign so that way clearer.
Thank you.
We're ready.
Yes. So my proposal is not to lower the bar, but to have some kind of exception, exemption for people that are waiting for the test score, because my staff currently, right now we have 3 people still waiting for their test scores. And their scores hopefully will get, before January, but I highly doubt it. So I need clarification. If we are permitting people to wait for their test score, I agree with that. But at the same time, I'm not suggesting that we are that we're requiring to lower the bar.
Eric, thank you for your comment. And Audrey, could we please pause for the interpreters to switch? 1 moment, please. Thank you.
Audrey, are we ready?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of back up what Eric was saying as well. I think kind of we're going in circles, and I appreciate the RAC trying to devise a way for new interpreters who are working towards their EIPA and getting fully licensed to be considering that and writing that into this temporary rule proposal. But I also don't agree with or support like lowering professional standards of these licenses, especially an educational license, in order to do that. And there has to be, I feel like we have to develop another path, which is what we tried to do before with that special license, and then realized that wasn't maybe meeting the definition of a specialty license. So we had to drop that. So I feel like we're kind of trying to create those pathways through lowering the standard of an educational license, and that's quite concerning. So that's kind of where I feel like we're stuck a little bit and needing to kind of find a clear way forward to be able to introduce new interpreters into the field, give them some time and some practice, and then be able to qualify for a full permanent educational license.
Tammy?
So this is Sammy, you're gonna probably have to get a law change. Because the way it's written is it's an education license, and to do education in K through 12, you gotta hold it. It doesn't allow provisional person who's the learner, that's what provisional license is, to work in education unless they hold that license. So they can hold both. But it's really compacted in there that if you're doing K-12, you have to have this license. There's no way around it, and you have to follow its ODE rules. So even if the board did put an exception in place or an exemption, you still have to hold a license at HLO.
That makes sense.
As a hand raise.
Al has their hand raised.
Al?
Al? Can you see me? Yes. I've been listening to all the comments, and as a deaf person, I think education it's an extremely important setting to have qualified interpreters. It really impacts deaf children. And I don't want to lower the bar. I understand needing to follow the rules, but we need some kind of guidance. I mean, Eric, do you have any suggestions on what we can do?
Trying my headset now. Can you hear me now? Clear? Okay.
Al, do you have more to say? No? Should I go off camera? Yes.
So I feel stuck. I thought we had a good idea with the learner's license that we had in place, but that doesn't work out. I thought a safeguard might have been either an exception or an exemption, but it's, from my understanding, we can't make exceptions to skirt the law, which effectively is what we were aiming to create that avenue. So I'm not, that's why I've been looking like, is there something that's going to happen in the provisional space? Because it's pretty explicit that the provisional license is no good in education. It's pretty clear we can't really create an exception or an exemption to omit somebody's license standing so that we can allow them to work. And what this is saying right now, to permit people to allow to get their results back, is in contradiction to what the OAR is. I don't know what the solution is, because it seems really clear what all the barriers are. I don't know if there's creative ways HLOs experience that in other groups, but it just seems scary for me on my end, and ours, not just me and our staff, but the impacts that it's going to have on kids, because it's going to mean less in-person interpreters, which correlates back to my question during the reporting of the numbers. I need to hire more virtual out-of-state interpreters if it means my people aren't going to be licensed in 3 weeks. And like that's like the true impact of how it's affecting us in the rural areas. So I don't have a proposal. I don't know what another solution might be. So thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say there's only 3 educational interpreters in Oregon.
Right, 3. And from what Tammy was saying, her assumption, it's the same for me. I'm assuming, and because I've also heard it, that educational interpreters, so at least the way it works in Southern Oregon is the K-12 workers work for they work for the 9 or 10 months of the year, but they get their checks stacked. So in June, they get their June, July, and August checks, and they don't get paid again until September. So it's very real for our rural folks that they're not going to get another paycheck until September. And unless they set aside that $175 for a license pre the June checks, then they're probably more than likely waiting till that September paycheck. And so I would imagine those educational numbers will shoot up after that September pay, which for us is on the 20th, but school starts on the 6th. And what I'm understanding is people have to have licenses in place before school starts. So it's just a list of issues that are piling up on my end. I don't know if that's the same for everybody else, but Thank you for letting me make that comment.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, and then Tammy, I saw you raise your hand and then Sammy. So go ahead, Tammy.
So I think it's definitely real that educational interpreters, because this is new, so they don't even know that they have to apply for this because everyone is still assuming that they're under the waiver. So once something comes out, now that being said, I have not looked at my work email, but there are many interpreters that don't look at their work email during the summer. So they probably don't even know that they're required to have this license yet, because we were all assuming that we had through December. So there's that. Back to the waiver or the, you can wait, you can get a license until you get your test results back. Is it possible that we're stuck with this the way it's written until we can get back to the legislature and change the law the way it's written? Because we've tried all of these different ideas, the provisional and the, all of those things to try and get a different way to get people into educational and medical and legal as well, without having, that provisional license. I mean, is it possible that we're stuck with this until we can go back to the legislature and change it?
Yes, you're stuck with it. I mean, what we're trying to do is help bridge the gap to make it accessible to people to get the license, so that's, in education, so that students have services and can, get those services. So we're trying to find a way to get these people licensed so that they can start signing these schools. But, and it is what it is in the law. It says professionals can't hold an education unless they hold an education license, which doesn't mean they can't hold both. They can, but yeah. And I haven't seen anything or heard of any legislative changes coming down the pipe, but that doesn't mean that something won't show up between now and in February. But I haven't seen or heard anything yet. A little bit about.
Can you repeat that, Sammy? You glitched on me a little bit. You haven't seen any what kind of changes?
I haven't seen the legislative changes to what is in your current laws as of yet, and
I haven't, this is Bob. I haven't seen any either.
Oh.
And if I can expound on that a little bit. So we had an opportunity for legislative concepts, but that window's closed and gone. So, but that doesn't mean anybody in the public, the community, the board as a private citizen couldn't reach out and get a legislator's ear. I don't know if those windows are closed yet or not. I just know that mine is. HLO's window is closed.
Okay. And also just to remember too, these OARs are not new. The 3.5 requirement is not new. So districts and around the state have been used to having to follow that.
Okay, we're going to pause for the interpreters to switch.
Interpreters, are you ready? Okay, great. Were you finished with your comment, or I just want to make sure that figuring out where we are right now?
Yes, I was finished.
Okay, Sammy,
So,
you had a comment.
just based on what I'm hearing, this is obviously a proposal, and so if the board so chose, to move forward with this, I could delete 7 and 8, which would not allow them to attest and have to change something else, that they would have to show proof of the score. You guys can approve that. And if you want, then you temporary rule.
Did you say remove B on page again? On page 48?
No. Nice, on page 43. Page 43 and 44, number 7 and number 8. Oh, so anything about the basically attesting to the EIPA exam score, passing it at 3.5, and then the reading new. And then 5 on page 41. So it just got hard, they have proof submitted that they have passed the EIPA 3.5.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right spot. Tammy,
I kind of think we have to. I don't think we have a choice. If we're saying that because of the new ODE rules, you have to have the license, even though there's the waiver that goes till December. So now educational interpreters are in a different group because now they don't get to follow that waiver. So if we're saying that to follow the ODE, they have to have the license, then also to follow ODE, they have to have the 3.5. So we don't have a choice but to strike 7 and 8.
I might have a question, and this is Jack. I'm just trying to put it together. Never mind. No, never mind. I'm good.
Ish.
So where are we doing? Are we continuing this discussion? Are we waiting for an update from Rack? Oh, I'm sorry, Mish, I missed your hand raise.
Hi, this is Mish. I have stated that I'm not in favor of lowering any standards, but I do also want to recognize this transition period that we're in. Is there a way to add a language assessment requirement that the applicant must have taken the EIP examination and have an ASLPI or SLPI score that has already been documented?
This is Sammy, so adding the requirement? In
Adding,
addition-
adding proof of language fluency.
To the board.
Proficient, yeah, language proficiency.
Which, this is Sammy, that's not required as one of the items under ODE, so it would be an additional item.
Right, and it would only be a
Okay.
temporary solution, that 1-year period until they had their EIPA assessment. And if they did not have the EIPA assessment, they would not be able to continue to work. But
Oh, I see what you mean. I did not understand what you meant. I'm sorry, Mish.
which part?
I thought you were just adding an additional, but you're saying if they don't have their EIP score, they could have this other thing for this year, and then upon renewal, show the EIPA.
As part of the 1-year bridge. Yes. So proof of having taken the EIPA and proof of language proficiency, which would give them a 1-year window of being compliant with the law. Is that something that that would be worth considering?
But it's ODE.
Jack is saying, oh, sorry, this is Jack. I didn't mean to call on anybody or go over anybody, speak for anybody. So
Yeah, the rule could be written that way.
So the ODE requirements, so they're still gonna be requiring it though, so it's already on ODE's end, so there's nothing really that we can do about it, right, Heather? Is that right? I'll call on, because the OREs call for that, so I'm gonna do Heather and Eric after Heather answers my question.
You repeat the question. So your question is that ODE requires a 3.5 EIPA in its rule?
Yes,
So
and the ODE, you know, because if you looked at that page 47, the last page, or the last part of page 47, you know, it's 47 to, yeah, it's on 47.
yeah. So looking at page 47.
So it says the minimum standards, they have to hold a license, you know, that text, you know, wherever it says minimum standards, a public school may employ or contract for the services of a sign language interpreter for a student only if the sign language interpreter is licensed through the health licensing office and meets the following minimum requirements. So then we would be, so that is like on top of our license.
Yes, this is Heather. So Jack, yes, the individual under the ODE's rules needs to have a license through your board. They also need to have either the 3.5 EIPA performance test or hold the RID, NIC, CI, or CT certification. And then be on page 48. Hold a bachelor's or associate's degree from an interpreter education program or in a related education field, or achieve a passing score on the EIPA written test. So these requirements under ODE are in addition to what they would need for the board's license.
Okay, thank you. Eric, did you have a comment? And then did you want to discuss that more? Do you want to discuss this more, Eric, or are we?
I just wanted to, I guess my question, and I don't know, it wouldn't be us at the board, maybe for Georgianne, but is ODE able to publish a memo? You know, something that's not a full revision of a law, but something to the effect of saying, for this interim 1-year period, we have a temporary, you know, whatever permission to use, or for folks awaiting a test score, something with that language from ODE, so that it doesn't like nullify a license or anything to that regard. But what I heard Georgianne saying was that it would take forever for it to be changed on ODE's end, months and months and months, which will already go into the next school year. So is it possible to issue a memo that these new licenses rolling out for an interim period will accept people in awaiting a score, something to that language? I'm just trying to think about some way we can support. It sounds like we're in support of having this bridge from the new license passing and the deployment of interpreters with licenses, and there's a select group of folks who are going to be kind of in that gray area. Well, not really gray. It's the non-certified space for right now. So is that a possibility, Georgianne?
There is nothing that I could write that could contradict our OAR. I can't write anything to contradict that. But that's kind of what Sammy and I were talking about, possibly having something through HLO stating for this period of time, this extension is equal to holding license for ODE or whatever, some kind of language giving us that, yeah, we want you to go through HLO. That was the intent. We need you to go through HLO. Originally, we were going to just have that. That was it. And that would have actually worked, I think, because because you now would just be dealing with you all. But for some reason, legally, they really still, lawyers still wanted our minimum requirements. So we left those. But I don't want the fact that we are pointing to HLO stopping people from being able to follow HLO's rules. Because that's our intent, is that they
You're
follow
right.
HLO's rules.
Right, but the ODE rule does do that. And we can't say, hey, educational interpreters, you get a pass from the ODE rules. We
Right.
can't, HLO or the board cannot do that.
Right, but can't the board say that the waiver is considered licensure at this point until the waiver is pulled, until people are required to license? Something to just get through that language. Because again, I feel like we're letting language get in our way of actually getting interpreters out there in the field. And I want to go. I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Eric is agreeing.
Oh, thank you. I just heard some of it. So, I mean, I think there's got to be a way we can, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer though. And the lawyers seem to be the ones who, they caused this problem. Let's go to them and make them fix it.
Thank you, Georgianne. This is Jack. Can I call for a quick 5-minute recess? Just everybody probably needs to go to the bathroom or something, I'm guessing. So 5-minute break starting at 11:12, be back at 11:17. Great.
Very quickly, sorry.
Eric's ready.
Sorry, Mish.
Tammy, did somebody have something? Okay, okay. All right, I guess we're ready to begin the meeting.
Yes.
Great, everybody is here, everybody is back and ready to go. Audrey, are you still here? Take a look. Audrey, okay, great. Tammy, Mish, Eric, Al. Okay, it looks like everybody is back. All right, looks like we're ready to go, and I'm here. Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and reconvene the meeting at a little bit later than I intended, 11:28. So we're gonna continue with the session at this point.
Sammy.
So this is Sammy. So kind of I feel like we've got 3 options. One would be just to leave the rule how it is, which has nothing about attesting to the EIPA, has nothing about you have to pass it by the time you renew, none of that. It just says must submit proof of passing the EIPA 3.5 or above. So you could leave it alone. You could adopt a temporary rule, remove that attestation piece and renewal piece out of the temporary rule so that it still allows you to have that larger list of credentials. Or you can adopt it as written. Thank you.
Okay, Tammy? Tammy? I'm calling on you if you would like to speak. You had your hand up. Oh, it's.
I think she got kicked out.
All right, Carrie said I think she got kicked out. Hang on. Oh my God, kicked out. Yeah. Right.
We still have quorum, so.
We still got quorum. So do any of those?
Okay, so we can proceed. When Tammy comes back, if she wants to make a comment, we can call on her then. So let's go ahead and proceed with people in the room. Are we having more comments about? Or do we need to make, do we have any action?
Yeah, so you kind of have three choices, or four, actually. You can leave the rule as it is and we do nothing. And that doesn't, so it wouldn't have anything about the attestation. You'd have to show proof of the EIPA 3.5 or above. You leave it alone. You can adopt a temporary rule as we have here with the attestation. And once you renew, you have to provide the passing score. Or you could take the temporary rule, delete the part about attestation and renewal for EIPA, which would then just give you the larger list of credentials that you could have in order to get the education license. Or you could do Mishra's idea, which would be do the attestation and then prove that renewal and language proficiency. But that wouldn't get you out of ODE's rules. You could do it, but it wouldn't eliminate having to have 3.5 through the ODE. Do nothing, then we can move on. It's one of the others. Then I would need a motion.
Audrey?
Yes, this is Audrey. Thank you. I propose I guess before I propose, I want to say I'm sorry to the RAC because my proposal is going to be to do nothing and basically leave as is. But I appreciate and understand the RAC creating this and trying to create pathways for incoming interpreters. It just seems like we are at an impasse with ODE and those OARs already set in place, and proposing something that is in alignment with that is not going to be possible until we get legislation through and laws changed.
Thank you, Audrey. Mish?
Audrey, this is Mish. Audrey, would you clarify when you say leave as is, do you mean as is currently written in our agenda document? Or as is written without the addition of the attestation?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. This is Audrey. Thank you for, that was confusing the way I phrased it. Yeah, I mean, as is in the proposed rules now. So the permanent license, so basically not making the changes that have been proposed by RAC in this temporary rule. Is that clear? I'm not quite sure how to like legally say that correctly, but leave the rules as are written for licensure and kind of dismissing this proposal from the RAC.
Sammy, could we see that language as it is now?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Thank you, Audrey.
All right,
Share my screen here.
that's good.
Sure.
Sammy's not ready. She should probably take a peek.
Here's what the rule says right now.
Can you zoom in to make that full screen? Thank you, that helps. So I'm formulating my thoughts. This is Mish. I think one of the concerns with this is the use of deaf interpreters in the educational setting. And I know that's a large topic, but I think that we need to consider that this doesn't allow deaf interpreters in the K through 12 setting unless we create a specialty license for that.
I missed what Jack just said.
He was calling on me. This is Audrey. I just wanted to say, again, even if we changed, I really appreciate you, Mish, and recognizing that this language now is not inclusive of our deaf colleagues. And I think that that is very important. But again, we go back to what's already on the books with ODE and those OARs. And yes, they are not inclusive either. So it just still feels like we're at an impasse as far as language we can change to the educational license. But I do agree that creating that specialty license and having a pathway, it would, yeah, again, another bridge that like we are trying to create and legally struggling to find where it can fit in.
And it looks like it needs to be a separate bridge. So, yeah.
One of the interpreters asking, are we done with the share screen?
You going down, Sheriff?
Chair, are we done with the screen?
Yeah, I mean, has everybody had a good look at it? Does the board want to make more comments or take other additional looks at this before we take it away? If not, we can remove it. All right, thanks. All right, are there any more comments before we proceed to the next topic on the agenda?
All right.
Just a question about rules of order. Do we need to propose something and vote on it if we're discussing this term? Okay, I see Sammy saying no.
You don't, if you don't want it, you want to leave it as I showed you just on the screen, you don't have to do anything. I suppose you can say, you can make a motion to not do anything, you could do that.
And this is Audrey. I guess I would defer to Jack as chair, like if you want to check in with the other board members and see if they're in support of leaving the original language.
This is Jack. For the record, do we need to make a statement of proposal, or do we want to just leave it as it is? What's the best approach?
Maybe has her hand up.
Amy has her hand up.
Tammy?
Hello, I'm now on my phone because my computer is giving me problems. And I joined just as you took the share screen down. So this is apparently the language about educational interpreters. Did we strike 7 and 8? Or is it still on? Or am I in the wrong place?
At this point, it's do nothing. Leave it how it is today in the rules as is. Not the proposal. What's already there, which is what's in ODE's rules.
Okay, so that would not have 7 and 8 in there.
Correct.
Correct? Correct, okay.
So this is Heather. Tammy, thanks, Jack. So Tammy, it also wouldn't have any of the additional certificates or ways, the broadened ways to get the education license. Basically, it is just what's in ODE rule right now. Is what, if you don't move forward with a proposal or with an amended proposal, then you're just keeping what's currently in your rules, which is what matches the ODE requirement.
Yes, so the laundry list of credentials that the RID recognizes was in the proposal. If we do nothing, those wouldn't go in to a temporary rule. You could choose to do a temporary rule, remove the attestation and renewal piece, but add in all of these credentials. You could do that. So giving people more ways to get credentialing options to get the education license and leave out the attestation, the EIPA.
This is Tammy. This is so frustrating for me right now to have the technical difficulties that I'm having to be able to get to the original OARs and see what that listed and be able to compare, and I can't do that right now. So,
You want me to read it to you? Yeah, I would read them. I can read them.
The original OARs had a list of having RID certification, NIC. I don't think it said NIC because it was old. Is this what you're talking about? It said RID, CICT. I think it said current RID certification or something like that. Yes, please read it. The current OAR.
The current OAR for the board or for Department of Education?
ODEs.
Okay. Okay, so, minimum standard, a public school may employ or contract for the services of a sign language interpreter for a student only if the sign language interpreter is licensed through the health licensing office and meets the following minimum standards. The sign language interpreter must achieve a passing score of 3.5 or above on the EIPA performance test or hold an RID, NIC, CI, or CT certification. And
Hang on, Sammy. Are you reading the HLOs? Because I asked for ODEs, the original from 2013, ODEs list. Because that's what we still follow, not anything, because you just read about HLO.
this is ODE's rules right now. What I'm reading.
They changed in June. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
So an HLO license, the sign language interpreter must achieve a passing score of 3.5 or above on the EIPA performance test or hold an RID, NIC, CI, CT certification, and the bachelor's or associate's degree from an interpreter education program or in a related educational field, or achieve a passing score on the EIPA written test.
Okay.
Do I either read each of them?
I'm thinking.
While you're thinking, we're going to do an interpreter switch.
Perfect.
Sammy.
So in what we provided to you today, it has all the credentials that the RID recognizes.
Correct.
You think that that is important to have in a rule now for an educational license? Will allow more people to get that license.
How much do we bite off? Do other people on the board have comment while I'm thinking?
Or are we talking, we're on the same topic, right? We're talking about the educational licensure, correct?
Correct.
Great, I have no comment at this point. So board, do you have anything to add?
So our choices, Sammy, are what's written today that was in the documents that you sent out, or what's the other option?
You can leave the rule how it is permanently done today, which is what's in ODEs. You can take what we drafted for you today that has the attestation and confirmation of renewal for the EIPA. Or you can take what we drafted for you today, remove that piece about the EIPA attestation and proof of renewal. Or you could do what Mish suggested, which is if you don't have your EIPA passing score, you also must be proficient in sign language.
Right. I would love to do what Mitch suggested, however, that doesn't follow ODE's rules. My hesitation with the listing of all of the different certifications that would qualify under number 6 there, the proof of meeting the minimum standards, and then having all of those other things. I would like to just say, or any certification that RID recognizes, because if we list all of these out and we list out all of those certifications, what happens when RID changes the name of their test? Then we have to go back and do this all again.
Correct. That's how it
So
works.
that's my hesitation in listing out all of the certifications. I am all for trying to have any pathway to get more interpreters in education. Please, we need more interpreters in education. However, the people that set up the minimum standards years ago did this with
a lot of research and a lot of discussion and agreement on this is the minimum standard that we should have. So, and I also feel for Eric's situation and people in rural Oregon, their situation in that it's difficult to get interpreters, and I understand that. The turnaround time for testing is frustrating. I understand that as well. However, these standards have been in place for years. They're not new. So this isn't a new thing that we're dealing with. It's not like all of a sudden we're saying now you have to have a 4. If we were increasing the standards and saying we have to have a 4 now, then maybe there would be more flexibility with, we're going to give you time to get to that, because it's going to take people time to raise their skills from a 3.5 to a 4. So I understand that. I'm not ready to lower the standards on the children. I'm not. So I would like to see, if people want to keep the proposal that we're looking at right here, to strike 7 and 8 is what I would like to see. But just to clean up that language, we don't need to list every single anything that our is. But I don't know how we go back and do that after this is already.
You have to list them all.
You have to list them all. So then when they look at the new test and they have a new name, so the NIC is not the NIC anymore. Now it's the XYZ, that we have to go back and change and add that to our law. We can't make something general to include whatever RID is currently recognized. Well, that's government for you.
I have a comment.
Giving away your power.
Eric, I want to call on you, but do you have a question? Or Heather, do you have a clarifying? Eric, or I have a question, excuse me, a clarifying question for Heather. Based on the language itself, there's just one sentence that says you must hold RID certification. Can't we use that language in replace of what we're talking about? Because it doesn't specifically define it there. The bill doesn't. So don't we have the authorization? Don't we have control for what language we use? We don't have to list every particular certification, correct? Why does it need to be more specific than what the actual bill says?
So, Jack, I think your question was aimed towards me, Heather. So I'll take a stab at answering it if that's okay.
Yes, I'm asking Heather. Yes.
Great discussion, great question. As Tammy pointed out, this is one of those government things, one of those legal things that we kind of look at and can be frustrating and can also require us to go back and amend rules. But the recommendation is that to avoid a delegation of power, or to avoid the board giving up its authority and saying what specific things it does and does not approve, that you actually state in the rule what it is you actually approve and do not approve. So that way, if an organization in the future changes its standards and lowers them or changes them in a way that the board wouldn't agree with, you haven't given up your power and to have said, no, we don't agree with that. So basically, we're saying, this is what they have currently. You've looked at what they have currently, you're in agreement with that, and that's written into rule. But you're not saying we're gonna adopt anything in the future that we do, because you don't know what they're gonna adopt in the future. So how can you say you approve of it or not? But you can say what you currently know. And so you do put that in rule as to what you currently agree with, because the board has that power to agree and adopt and say, yes, this is what we want. Instead of saying, in the future, we'll just agree to all of the things you do. Well, that's not the way you need to write the rules.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. I feel more confident now. Thank you. Now I would like to call on Eric and then Mish. So Eric?
Hello again, Eric here. If we strike 7 and 8, that's pretty much just back to the original how it was. Isn't that right? Or is there something additional that was added from how it was originally written to this? Because this is also what the RAC had come up with. Is that, am I also clear there?
This is Sammy. Remove 7 and 8, then you have the new laundry list of all the RIPs. They recognize.
And that was,
Yes.
Okay, and there's no way to truncate that. It all has to be listed out.
Correct.
Okay. In that case, I'd also propose that with the BEI, we get rid of the T for Texas and keep BEI, because as I've shared with Sammy, it turns out the BEI is actually issued across 5 different states. So you can have a Wisconsin BEI, but the way we have it listed excludes Wisconsin. So that's just a kind of an aside with the listing of credentials.
So the only issue with that is I have that on my larger list of rule changes because it's defined. So if I change it here, I would have to just say the whole thing out because we defined it somewhere else. But I do have it on my.
Okay. I was just thinking if we're going to be correcting the list now, like I got a few other suggestions. But in terms with the, so I believe if, and please correct me if I heard you wrong, Georgianne, it sounded like ODE is looking to our board to pretty much say what the rule's going to be. And so I don't know, maybe a partial Hail Mary here. I guess HLO has said that we're going to have this until January 1st, that licenses, there's going to be no enforcement, a period of non-enforcement, sorry. And so like, if we could just keep that till the end of the year, I think that would be sufficient to leave things as they are, because like we were just kind of talking at the beginning of this, there's going to be a lot of interpreters caught off guard if they are getting to work in 2 weeks and find out that they need to have their license in place within a week of that. So, so if we could at least leave the waiver on enforcement in place, and I don't know how that gets communicated, but that it doesn't contradict ODE or ODE's in support of that. However we word that, I think is necessary to kind of keep the waters as calm as we can for right now. In terms of the permanent rule,
Eric, let me just clarify, this is Stephen.
Yep.
The waiver only is issued by HLO's licensing. And so if ODE's rules require something, it requires something. Our waiver doesn't equal a license. It's waiving the enforcement of a license. That makes sense? ODE says you must hold a license with HLO. That's what it says. You must hold a license with HLO. Working in education, shall hold the educational license. You don't get a waiver of the license. We can't, waiver won't apply to ODE's rules. They would have to write something saying, you don't have to have an HLO license right now, a temporary rule. Because whatever, we know, for whatever reason.
This is Jack. Well, I want to clarify something, or maybe it's a follow-up question, but really, is it feasible or appropriate for the board to make a proposal for an amendment to have a specialty license that cancels out ODE's ruling? Like it would be a provisional could there be a provisional education license? Would that be, oh, excuse me, preliminary like a preliminary license that would permit interpreters while they're waiting for the score or something where they are in this process. Can we work with them? Can we make a proposal for that? Or is that not permitted? I'm just curious. I guess I'll wait for the answer and then Mish will call on you. Oh, call now? Yeah. Oh, excuse me. They're discussing. Mish, I'll call on you now.
So I wanted to go back to the comments about how the board could use its power and its decision-making ability. And we've been spending a lot of time talking about lowering standards, but if we are being looked to as leaders in this area, this is an area that we should be talking about raising standards. EIPA, the organization EIPA itself, says a minimally qualified interpreter is 4.0. And Oregon state law is 3.5, and we've been spending so much time talking about how we can even get around that already low standard. When if we have the opportunity on this board to make standards, to have this discussion, we should be talking about the exact opposite and raising it to 4.0.
And this is the interpreter. We're going to do an interpreter switch.
I see Sammy's hand.
Interpreter, ready? I just want to clarify, the way the purpose of the RAC was not to lower the standard. The purpose was to allow, because the EIPA put out a giant notice saying for 6 months, you're not going to have a score.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that the score shouldn't be 4, 3.5 or whatever, just that at this time, we don't have it. So you might be waiting 180 days to get your score. Which I don't know if that's always been that way, if this is new. I just know I got the notice. So, but the intent was not to lower it. It was just to allow people to work while they're waiting the 6 months to get a score.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. But if we are giving them a bridge to get to compliance, why would we not encourage them to be fully qualified, which the EIPA has set at a 4.0, not a 3.5? I just wanted to put that out there for a possible discussion.
And then Audrey. So I think that's definitely an item of discussion, but I believe that you would have to have a rule change with Department of Education as well. So it would have to be together. There's 3.5. So we all have to increase the standards together.
Yeah, go ahead. Or
Sorry, I see Georgianne's hand up and I'm sure she has something valuable to add about ODE.
No, I just wanted to share, you were talking about the EIPA and I actually contract for that. And it has always been a long wait and we have talked with them multiple times. I personally have spoken with them multiple times. Boys Town is the one who does the scoring and there is no option at this point or in the near and foreseeable future that that will ever change. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. It will be, it's typically a 6 to 9 month waiting list for scores. So I've been trying, sorry.
go ahead, Audrey.
Yes, I just have a clarifying question because I feel like I'm hearing contradictory things. So initially we were given the options and one of the options was to keep the rule as written in our permanent rules. And correct me if I'm wrong, but those original rules do not include a list of all of these RID credentials, all of these credentials, not just RID, but BEI and all of these credentials. Is that correct?
Correct.
But then you also said that we have to list out all of these credentials. So we can't both keep the original rule and also list out all of these credentials.
Sammy.
So this is Sammy. So today you only have a few options. You can have the 3.5 or above on the EIPA. You can hold an RID, NIC, an RID CEI, an RID CT. Those are your only options. If you want the temporary rule, you get all the laundry list of options. So you can.
Which one is in compliance with ODE, or are both of them in compliance with ODE's OARs?
They would. For sure, the ones that are in place now.
Okay. So the rule as written without these changes would follow those OARs that ODE is following. But we don't know if listing out all of these credentials is in compliance with that or not.
Have to get back down that.
So this is Heather. Maybe a way to look at it is there are two different things that a person who wants to work in an educational setting has to meet. They have to, get the board license to fulfill the requirements. They need to fulfill the ODE. Okay. So right now what the board has in rules right now is the exact same as ODE. Okay. Now, the proposal for today, based on RAC recommendations, was to add additional things to the list of what people can do to get there. Now, that's just to get the board license. Okay, so if the person has the board license, they would then fulfill the requirement in ODE's rule to have the board license. And then they would go on and meet the other requirements of what ODE has in its rules. So that would be okay with ODE's current rule for the board to increase ways to get a board license. Okay.
I'm just so confused. I'm sorry. I'm so confused because I feel like I'm hearing different things of like, we can't go against ODE's OAR and then, but our license is a part of ODE's requirements, but not all of ODE's requirements. So why would an educational interpreter want our educational license, but still not qualify for ODE? I'm just so confused. I'm sorry.
I think this is Heather. I think possibly the end result at the end of rulemaking would be for maybe all of the requirements to match up. Maybe that's what the board and ODE would like to do. But it's also a stepstone process, right? So the RAC is working on the side, coming up with recommendations, and then it comes before your board. And if the board then says, yeah, we like those recommendations and we want to put that into our rules, then ODE, next step, gets to say whether they want to then have that in their rules. And in a perfect world, the timing on that would be the same. In an imperfect world, you're going to have a little bit of difference in the board rules, yet. And so slightly different with ODE, but they're still in compliance because you have to have the two different, you have to meet the two separate requirements. So it doesn't mean that they have to be the same at the exact same time, but that would be the lovely end result. So my understanding is that ODE is very interested in what the RAC and the board have to say as to what The policy decision is for what those standards should be for an educational license. So there's the policy discussion of what those standards should be, whether they should be lower, whether it should be higher, a 4.0 or whatnot. That's a whole policy discussion. And if the board isn't in agreement with what the RAC has started to go down with this pathway and wants to give feedback to the RAC to say, no, our policy decision is going to be that we want a 4.0 or higher, or we want higher standards, then that'll be feedback for the RAC. And the proposals today do not go with that 4.0 standard, okay? But if your policy decision is that, no, we don't want the 4.0 standard right now. Yes, we do want the additional RID certificate way for people to come in and get an educational board license. Then those people would be able to get a license, and then they would go and match up with ODE. And then they would, under ODE rules, have the board license, which is the first requirement, and then they would look at the other requirements. Now, whether ODE enforces their rules or whatever they do is going to be different than what the board is doing and its enforcement favor. So I know it's complicated, but I'm just trying to separate out and also give some context for what your decisions can be today. Because if the policy discussion is that you don't like the additional RID certificate pathways that the RAC has been working on, and the feedback is, no, we're gonna go for a higher standard, then I think the decision would be to leave your board rule as it is, have the RAC go back and come up with something new. But if you are interested in what the RAC has done with giving you some of those RID pathways, then you could look at either moving forward with a temporary rule, and whether or not you deal with the EIPA scoring delay or take that out. That's like a separate issue, but there are several policy choices going on here that I'm hearing.
Thank you for clarifying that, Heather. That helps a lot. This is Audrey, by the way. Sorry, forget to say that. I also just want to say I don't think it will be of great service to interpreters working in our community to have policy that's not in alignment with ODEs, OARs. Like I get what you're trying to explain of like, oh, we can set a precedent and then wait for ODE to see if they follow that same standard and policy. But I feel like for interpreters trying to navigate, how do I get this license? How do I get that? How do I make sure I'm in compliance with both? It just feels like such a mess for them to try to figure out, because I mean, I'm struggling to understand it now. So I just feel like we can create, well, hopefully we can create a clearer bridge, a clearer path instead of writing policy that doesn't align with ODE.
Sammy?
So I think that some of this can be fixed within a big. Like, what do I need to have a board license? Answer. What are the requirements from ODE? Answer. So I think if we pose it in that way, that people might understand it. I know that's my experience, that when I do have reviews, people understand them better because it puts things into context. Not that they'll like the answer, but I think it'll be clearer because it is unclear. It's confusing, Audrey. You're not alone. You right up to say. One. The rules. Yeah. Miss got her hand up.
This is Jack. Okay, I'll call on Tammy first, and then,
Hello. Okay, so the prior OARs before June allowed and listed for RID, NIC, CICT. That was it. There was nothing that had BEI. So I understand the addition of adding BEI and some of the other certifications. So just put that out there. So saying we're adding RID as another pathway to be an educational interpreter, RID's always been in there. But adding the list of the other NAD, BEI, all of those, adding those with, because we've had people that have come in with BEI, and I agree, Eric, also with the Texas BEI, we do need to get rid of the T. So there's that. To put another little wrinkle in the plan, the original OAR also required 12 seat hours of continuing ed, and that is not in our language. So did ODE get rid of that 12 seat hour requirement, or did we just miss include?
It appears that they deleted it.
I'm sorry, Sammy, what was that?
Here's based on what I'm looking at. 581.015.2035, that they deleted that.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, OAR, sorry, at 581.015.2035, page 47, that they have deleted that 12-hour requirement from their rules.
Delete from. So number 3, so we're no longer required to have the 12 seat hours.
That's what I'm reading here.
I had a number. It's there.
You what?
The number 3, the 12 seat hours is still there.
I don't know what you're looking at, but there is no number 3. Are you on page 47?
No, not on your documents. I'm looking at Oregon Public Law. Oregon.public.law/rules/OAR _ and then the number.
You need to go to the state site, not the public law site. That's a privately owned site.
Correct. I can.
Sorry, this is Georgianne.
Okay. So when did the 12 seat hours go away?
June 24th, June 14th, 2024.
Of this year.
2024, correct.
Sorry, you were glitching, that's all. Yeah.
This is interpreters, we're gonna do a switch.
I'm in rural Indiana and I have the worst connection. I'm trying.
I can share my screen that shows the rule if you'd like.
Oh, I got the document up on my email, the one that's in the documents you sent to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I apologize for giving that in there last minute. Thank you.
I was working this morning, so I had no time to look at it, but I'm trying to get caught up.
Cindy, again, did you have your hand up?
This is Tammy. No, I forgot to just take it down. Thank you, Jack.
All right. This is Jack. Okay. So HLO staff, what do you propose we do next? Do we, for this part? Yeah, Sammy?
So you can leave the rule as it is today that has achieving a passing score of 3.5 or above on the IPA performance test or holding an RID and I see RID CI or RID Certificate of Translation, and we'll do the voucher, you can leave it how it's already permanently in the rule, that's the first option. You can take the temporary rule, as I sent it to you yesterday and today, which is leaving in the attestation and renewal piece, the EIPA. Or you could delete that from the temporary rule and just have the larger list of recognized credentials from the RID. Or you could add in the language proficiency piece if they didn't have their passing score on the EAPA at the time of application. But they still have to show the passing score on renewal.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you for the options. So I guess I'm confused because the last two seem to allow us to cancel out ODE's ruling. So am I understanding that correctly? What's the feel on that? Because I feel like what you just said gave us kind of authority to cancel out ODE's ruling, but the law says no. So I just think, do you mind clarifying that, please, Sammy?
No, I get what you mean. So like Heather said earlier, it's two separate things happening. And because they don't align today, even though we would love them to align, you have to meet the requirement at HLO, whatever that is. And you have to meet the requirement at ODE. HLO could say you have to eat a bowl of watermelon before you get a license. And ODE may say you have to eat a bowl of lemons. And you have to meet both requirements. And they'll be different in each set of rules, but they don't cancel each other out. Does that help with that example? Sometimes it's easier that.
HLO.
Okay, so we can pick, so this allows us to make a rule that kind of goes above ODE, is that my understanding? But they're both still acceptable?
They're both still required.
I think what they're missing is HLO enforces HLO, ODE enforces ODE. They're apples and oranges.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to those 12 hours. Did the RAC suggest that we get rid of the 12 hours? How did those 12 hours get? Maybe Georgianne can answer that.
I can. So actually, when you're talking about the 12 hours that were originally in the ODE minimum requirements for sign language interpreters. Okay. So it was different than a license. It was just minimum requirements. And there was kind of a system of school districts being the ones, I think, Tammy, you've talked about that in your area, trying to keep up with those minimum requirements. So when we looked at the new legislation, which kind of took sign language interpreters for education out of ODE's hands, because technically, no matter what, you have to have an HLO license now because of the way that the legislators wrote the law. So we tried to minimize anything that we would ask of anyone, because if you have to go through HLO to get a license, it feels like we want to be a minimal barrier to that. We want you licensed and working in the schools. So we took out anything, especially we do not verify those pieces as ODE. Again, those are not pieces we would verify unless we were to have a complaint filed that someone, maybe someone wasn't getting their 12 hours. That's the only way we would know about it, if somebody told us. So again, that would be another piece just take out, because we're not monitoring it anyway. So why, now you all could put that in your rule, because you all monitor the licensure stuff. We don't. So I don't know. And I'm happy. I'm the one who does the rule. I'm the one who changes the rule. I do all of that work. I am happy to go back and take out as much as, see fit to make these things as easy as possible. That has been my goal from day one, to make it as easy as possible for interpreters to get licensure.
This is Jack. Question in regards to that. If we could go back and delete things, what would be the timeline for that? What would that look like for you?
For ODE, it's a little bit of a system, so it's minimum of 2 months. I have to get on the rack. So we have a set rack for everything and a set board for everything. And I know Sammy and I have had to like really rack our brains to figure out how we're so different. So I would have to have, well, I'd first have to get talk to my supervisor and make sure that I'm, that we are in line with doing this, which I believe we would be. And then I would have to get on the rack and take my draft of the revisions to the rack, then get feedback. I would have to do some public engagement. This would actually serve as a public engagement because you all are public. And so I would do some more public engagements. And then, so, I mean, we're talking probably, I'd say October. I don't think I'd be able to get in September. It's too soon. So October, maybe November. It could possibly be done by December. I will tell you, I started this rule, took it to the rack in December, and it wasn't done until June. But that really did have a lot to do with back end stuff, people coming back and saying, no, we want more, we want less in the rule. So, there are things that can happen, but it is not a fast process. I have put a question into our.
Okay, sorry.
Nope. Oh, I was just going to say, I did put a question into my legislative expert about, is there something I can do immediately to like stall, like take our rule out for a minute or put it on hold or whatever. So when he gets back to me, I'll know a little bit more.
So, sorry, the interpreter was a little choppy. I'm sorry if I like jump in while you guys are still going. I have to explain again. Okay. So I'm wondering if Heather, maybe you could jump in and clarify anything if it's legally related, but how do we set up a license or like have this extenuating circumstances? Like, like how does this law apply to ODE? And how do we make like an exemption to suspend requirements? Would that work? Can someone answer, Georgiana or Heather?
So this is Heather. I think your question is, can we suspend what ODE's rule is? Is that the question?
And can you finger spell again? Can you ask them to finger spell again, please?
So
what we're doing right now. So like, like we're trying to create this temporary, suspend the ODE rule. Could we make an extenuating thing for what we're doing right now with our decision? So that we can keep this process going? To speed up the interpreting process?
Heather. Not sure I understand the question completely. Is the question whether we can make an exception to having an education license?
No, sorry, I found the right word that I was looking for. Is it possible to suspend, let me go back. Is it possible for ODE to suspend their rule based on extenuating circumstances? So, because it's depending upon our decision that we're making today.
Got it.
So is ODA able to do that on their end? So, I was hoping that would expedite, that with like having something suspended while we're going through this process.
Right, great.
And for the interpreters, could we pause for just a second? Good. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready. Jack, that's a great question. So I think your question is, what options does ODE have for their rule? So I'm gonna think at the same time that I'm talking, so I apologize. This is a little jumbled. So as we know, ODE and HLO are two separate entities. And so ODE has the authority over their rules. So ODE would have to make the decisions in relation to what to do with the rules. And they've been working with HLO to try to figure out, what step to take first and, how this is gonna happen, what the RAC is doing, and trying to get things in the area. So they've been working with them. And so for ODE to change its rules, it needs to go through the normal rulemaking process. To do a quick change in rules, every agency has the option to do a temporary rule if it meets the standards of a temporary rule. Okay, so there are certain legal standards for meeting a temporary rule, and not all situations will meet that or not. So ODE would need to go through its process. First, they need to decide whether they want to do a temporary rule. Then they need to make sure that they meet that standard for a temporary rule and look at that. So that's a quick way for any agency to go through and make a change to a rule if they meet the standard for doing that. And that's, or they can go through the permanent rulemaking process. And that's the longer process that Georgianne was talking about too, that it takes that, ODE has a certain process that they use, and then it's a whole rulemaking process where you put notice out to the public and you get feedback. It takes several months to go through that process. So, and then separate from that, from the rules is the waiver. As we know, we talked about HLO waiver, and that's separate from rulemaking. That's a whole different beast, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's not really I am.
Okay, so there's really nothing that we can do with the timeline. We can't make it shorter for the temporary, correct?
This board cannot for ODE's rules, because ODE has the authority to go with that. So this board can provide direction as to its policy choices. And then depending on what those policy choices are, we could figure out whether there's any movement in the board's rules for a temporary rule, or whether we need to go back to the RAC. And then depending on whether the board goes forward with a temporary rule, then ODE and HLO could continue to work together to align rules and go through the processes that ODE has, as well as the processes that HLO has to follow separately for their own individual rules. There's a lot going on.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so Mish.
There was just a lot of information, so I'm sort of digesting this and a lot of possibilities. What I'm hearing in a nutshell is that HLO and the Board of Education, two separate entities, and it'd be great if they aligned, but it's not required. And that what we do here can influence the narrative and the future standards in this area. Is that in a nutshell?
Mish, this is Heather. And yes, I think that's a good summary. So what the statute requires is that the applicant for the board license meets the requirements established by the Department of Education by rule relating to the sign language interpreter serving in school. So that's where kind of the merriment comes up and the coordination. So where, you know, we have to, for the board license, for HLO to license an individual under the board's rules, they already have to meet the ODE requirements, whatever ODE sets. And then the statute says, meets any other requirements established by the board. So the board can put on additional requirements, different from what ODE requires. And so you have that ability there to do that. Now, for ease of the applicants, and because both HLO and ODE have been working together to try to get qualifications and, you know, to get things lined up, it could be that ODE and HLO have the exact same apple-to-apple match. That's not required.
Okay.
But to get the license, they do have to meet the ODE requirements.
As an applicant and as an interpreter, I would love to keep things simple and affordable. That's always a goal. But I also want to put in the forefront the goal of licensure, which is to protect consumers. And while I appreciate efforts to make it easier for interpreters, that's not what licensure is for. The licensure is to protect deaf consumers, and in this particular license, to protect deaf children who are not able to be here to speak for themselves because they're at school with many interpreters who are not meeting the current standards, which is problematic. So I would ask the board to consider not lowering any standards, at the very least keeping what are the current standards under the Board of Education, and considering raising those standards to meet the minimum qualifications. And this is something that is really momentous, so I really hope we think about this. We have a chance here to do something that we have not been able to do in Oregon, and that is to give deaf children qualified interpreters across the board.
Sammy?
So maybe what the best thing is to leave the rule as it is and then take back to the RAC the possibility of raising it to a 4, EIPA to a 4 or 4. Does it go above a 4? I don't even know. Maybe that's what we do.
I would support that.
I have a question.
This is me, sorry.
This is Tina. My question is,
I do have a question. Sorry, Tammy, you can go next. The question I have, instead of us sending an interpreter with an education or sending this back to the RAC committee, what if we just elevate it, just go ahead and do the proposal ourselves? Is that something that we're able to do to raise the standard?
But go with no, because of several things happen here. Is a temporary rule, it has to meet certain parameters, which I don't have next to me. Serious prejudice to the public type of wording. So, there's that, which raising that bar probably wouldn't. It would be opposite, basically. Second thing is that the RAC has not contemplated that, and that is a requirement of OHA. And the only way to get around that requirement is to get an exception. I have not asked for, therefore, yeah. We can do it, but the RAC has to look at it and has to make recommendations, and that's a requirement of OHA.
Okay, so are you saying that if we disagree with RAC, we can just, we have to keep going until, I mean, does it just go, is it a cycle that just goes back and forth? That RAC disagrees and we go, and we're in a deadlock?
No. No. What the proposal today was for yeah, I mean, you could propose it. You guys could approve a proposed rule with the 4.0 today, and then it would go through the regular rulemaking process. Which is about between 90 to 180 days.
Tina has a question.
Tina.
Yes, I call him.
Hi, this is Tina. I have a question for you guys. So the educational requirements have always been a 3.5. There's been teachers for all these years. What happens to those individuals